I'm so honored to be here tonight and have been so inspired by all of the speakers that came before me. I'm here tonight to share some simple, mindful tools that can make a big difference for you and your company. Does anyone here feel like at times your life can be just a little bit crazy? Modern life is crazy, and I know a little bit something about this craziness. About 7 years ago, the pace of my life led to a full body breakdown, an autoimmune disease likely triggered by stress. This happened while I was pursuing my PhD, studying, ironically, the neurology of stress. I had a full-time job and was writing my dissertation in the evenings. I had an 18-month-old daughter. I was pregnant with my second child, and for some reason, my husband decided this would be a great year to remodel our house. Life was crazy, but it wasn't just me. It didn't matter whether I was talking to a teacher, a student, a CEO, or a mother of four. We were all living at the same frantic pace. We live, work, and play at a pace that is much more chaotic and frenetic than any generation before us has experienced. For most of us, it's rare to have a conversation that's not fragmented between incoming texts, Google Calendar reminders, and our own distracting thoughts. From a neurological perspective, this chaos is a disaster. So tonight, I want to help you become resilient to the stress that modern life presents. I'm often referred to as a brain geek, so the obvious place for me to start when talking about stress is what it looks like inside the brain. Sensory information from the external environment enters our brain and is processed in the thalamus. If the input is perceived as unfamiliar or threatening, it sends a signal to the amygdala, which activates a set of responses designed to promote survival. This is our fight, flight, or freeze response. It floods our nervous system with chemicals. Our heart pounds faster, breathing becomes quick and shallow, our muscles tighten and senses sharpen. It's a way of protecting us. And when it works properly, it helps us to stay focused, energetic, and alert. The message also goes to the prefrontal cortex. This is the executive processing area of the brain. It's the part of our brain responsible for attention, impulse control, problem solving, and forward thinking. It's also the part of our brain that helps us think clearly and work efficiently. So basically, we have a smart part of our brain, and we have the alarm part of our brain. The alarm part of our brain reacts faster and at times can be stronger than the smart part of our brain. So I'll give you an example. About 15 years ago, shortly after I got engaged, my fiance and I took a vacation to St. Thomas. We decided to go snorkeling, which was a pretty big deal for me because I'm not a very good swimmer. So they gave me one of the foam floaty things that goes around your waist that they usually put on like the 8-year-olds. And we had to swim across a body of water to get to where the fish were. So we swam over to this island where we could see the reef, and the fish were just spectacular. I was in awe of everything that I saw. We found ourselves in a school of tiny fish swirling around us. It was a vertigo-like experience, something you would see in a Jacques Cousteau documentary. And suddenly the fish started to clear, and I saw this massive creature in front of me, the biggest thing I'd seen in the ocean so far. So I tapped on my husband's shoulder and pointed to what I saw. And this is what was coming towards us. I looked again at this giant toothy creature swimming towards us, and when I looked back at my fiance, he was nowhere to be found. Upon further investigation, I found him swimming frantically back to shore. Something about seeing this barracuda had triggered the fight or flight response in his brain. Now, I would like to think that somewhere in his prefrontal cortex was the thought that if he indeed wanted to marry me, he probably shouldn't leave me alone, unable to swim with a large barracuda in the Caribbean. The point being, or at least this is how he justifies it, is that his amygdala had taken over. And the part of his brain responsible for thinking about the consequences of his behavior, like years of me telling the story, wasn't functioning effectively. So that's a classic fight or flight response. And if we were to look at it on a graph, it would look something like this. At our baseline, we feel calm and at ease. Our prefrontal cortex is in charge. We can make clear decisions, we can solve problems, and we feel pretty much good. When we're up here, our limbic system is stimulated and the alarm response has taken over. This is a classic fight or flight response. In our society, we have things triggering the stress response all the time. They're not necessarily life-threatening, but the chemical reaction and what happens inside our brain is the same. Some of these triggers include getting behind on our email, work deadlines, being late, watching the news, traffic. Public speaking is a big one for me. We live in a world of things that trigger the stress response in our brain. Each time we have one of these spikes, we strengthen the neural pathway to the alarm in our brain. The more that pathway is used, the more it dominates our reactions. Before we know it, everything triggers the stress response in our brain. We wind up creating a new baseline that looks very different than the baseline we saw on the previous slide. The thing is, big stressors and little stressors both stimulate this response in our brain. It's stimulated in the person who's worried about being attacked by a barracuda, and it's stimulated in the employee who's struggling with a copy machine. When our brain looks like this, we're not making good choices, working efficiently, or performing optimally, because the part of our brain responsible for these skills has gone completely offline. I'm here tonight to share simple tools that bring our brains back into balance, tools that keep the spikes from going so high, and tools that bring us back to baseline more quickly. Mindfulness brings us back to baseline. It strengthens those neural pathways in the prefrontal cortex, the smart part of our brain, making it stronger, more efficient, and easier to use. I define this practice, mindfulness, as paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It's thousands of years of old knowledge that new science demonstrates will improve your relationships, your performance at work, your parenting, your health, and your happiness in general. Mindfulness means being relaxed and aware of what is going on in our own minds. It means calmly paying attention to what we're doing without being pulled into regrets about the past or fantasies about the future. It's our capacity to simply and fully focus on what we are doing. Formal mindfulness practices involve taking time each day to intentionally bring awareness to the present moment. It includes things like sitting meditation, mindful listening, mindful breathing, and mindful eating. Similar to how physical fitness relies on repeated exercise to create specific muscular and cardiovascular changes, mindfulness relies on specific exercises to create changes in the structure and functions of our brain. It is possible to literally rewire the brain to become more effective and resilient. But in the same way as physical fitness, these changes only occur with repeated practice. Let's talk about a few simple ways to practice. Mindful breathing is merely bringing our awareness to our breath. It looks like this. It seems simple enough. It also happens to be one of the best ways to calm the stress response in the brain. You can sit on a cushion, in a chair, or even lie on the floor and dedicate 5, 10, or ideally 20 minutes a day to bringing your awareness to your breath. If your mind wanders off, which it will, simply notice and return to the breath. That is all. If you feel like your day is too busy for a formal mindful breathing practice, you can try this. Each time you find yourself stopped at a traffic light, place your hand on your belly and take 3 deep, slow breaths while you're there. Each time your phone rings, take a deep, slow breath before you answer it. And when your child is struggling, offer them a 3-breath hug. Simply embrace and take 3 deep breaths together. It feels as good for you as it does for them. Mindful listening teaches us how to pay attention. When we practice mindful listening, we're stimulating the reticular activating system in our brain. This system helps our brain filter through all incoming stimuli and determine which stimulus is the most important to focus on at that time. At work, we need to filter through noise from other coworkers, pings of incoming texts and emails. We also need to filter through thoughts about what we were supposed to do yesterday and what we need to do later in order to focus on what we need to get done right now. Practicing mindful listening strengthens the reticular activating system in the brain, making it easier for us to focus on the tasks, the people, and the situations directly in front of us. It can be practiced anytime, anywhere, and we're going to try it quickly right now. What I'd like you to do is simply become still, open your ears, and listen to the sound of the tone. When the sound stops for you, raise your hand and open your eyes. It's pretty simple, and you don't have to have a fancy tone bar. At work, you can set a timer for 2 minutes and simply listen to the sounds you hear. When you take a walk, take 1 minute, be totally silent, and just listen. This simple practice brings our awareness to the present moment. It also stimulates the part of our brain that helps us pay attention. Our brain is 3 to 5 times more sensitive to negative information than positive. This helped us as we evolved because it was more important to be aware of the poisonous snakes than to stop and smell the beautiful flowers. Today, we don't often have the same threats to our survival, yet our brain is still built to pay more attention to the negative input. When we intentionally pay attention to the positive things in our life, we strengthen the neural pathways associated with those positive memories. The more frequently the pathway is used, the more our brain likes to use those pathways, increasing positive thoughts and lessening our focus on negative experiences. Gratitude is an excellent practice for anyone who wants to experience more positive emotions. Studies show that people who regularly practice gratitude feel 25% happier. They're more likely to be kind and helpful to others. They're healthier, more enthusiastic, interested, and determined. There are many ways to practice, but here's one of the most simple. Start a gratitude journal. Each night before you go to bed, write down 3 to 5 things you're grateful for. This is another simple practice that can make a big difference. Formal practice is essential to the rewiring of the neural pathways in our brain. It sets us up to be able to bring informal practice into our day-to-day lives. Informal practice is also essential. It takes effort and consistency, but for many, the benefits are instantaneous. Here are some ideas to help you bring informal mindfulness into your day-to-day life. Easier said than done, right? There are some things that can help us. First, start with 1 or 2 situations that you find yourself in regularly and commit to being present and engaged in the experience. Think about things like your commute, a weekly meeting, a meal, or the bedtime routine with your children. In these situations, you can actually train yourself in a systematic way to be present in 3 simple steps. First, bring your awareness to your body. Take a few deep breaths to start. Second, bring your awareness to the things you see. And third, bring your awareness to the things you hear. Stop multitasking. Multitasking could be the greatest barrier to optimal performance, sustained effectiveness, and creative inspiration. When we multitask, it puts our brain in a state of stress, inhibiting our ability to use the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for higher level thinking. When we train our mind to focus on one thing at a time, we become highly effective and efficient. Here are some ideas to help you avoid the multitasking trap. Set an alarm to check your email once on the hour, not every time one comes in. Close your laptop when someone comes into your office to talk to you, so you're not tempted to scan the screen while they're in front of you. Schedule your projects over the course of your day so you work on one at a time. And when you take a lunch, eat lunch. Leave your phone and other connection devices in the office. We know that the act of helping makes us feel good. Functional MRI scans show dramatic changes in the areas of the brain related to positive emotions when we meditate on compassion. There are ways to meditate on compassion, which you learn when you practice formally, but there are also ways to bring compassion into your day-to-day life. Engage in random acts of kindness. You can hold a door for someone. Let someone who appears rushed go ahead of you in line. Bring bagels and coffee to share in the office in the morning. These acts of kindness benefit you as much as they benefit the person you're helping. So hopefully you have a sense, as I'm sure people who attend this conference do, of how mindfulness can be helpful to you. But LOHAS is also a conference for business leaders, so I'd like to take one moment to talk about why businesses should care about mindfulness. When we integrate mindfulness into the workplace, our employees are healthier and we save a lot of money. According to the World Health Organization, the cost of stress to American businesses is as high as $300 billion a year. And unless we change course, this will only get worse. With cardiovascular disease, asthma, and high blood pressure, the evidence is incontrovertible that high levels of stress exacerbate these conditions. And it's not just the cost of rising premiums. Studies show that U.S. employers spend 200 to 300% more for the indirect costs of health care in the form of absenteeism, sick days, and lower productivity than they do on actual health care payments. One of the best and cheapest ways to become healthier is through mindfulness exercises like meditation. Studies suggest that if we reduce our stress through practices like mindfulness, we can reduce the severity of some conditions and prevent others from occurring in the first place. Our employees are simply healthier. The effects of stress reduction techniques like mindfulness are equally dramatic on our efficiency and productivity. That's because these mindfulness tools change the way we think so dramatically they can be measured biologically. On a functional MRI scan, the brain of a meditator is profoundly different than that of a non-meditator in ways that suggest an elevated capacity to manage emotions and concentrate. This can make a profound difference in our work lives. According to the Center for Creative Leadership, the average worker is interrupted every 11 minutes. It then takes them 25 minutes to get back to the original task. No wonder we all feel like we've been busy all day and never got anything accomplished. With mindfulness training, if we're interrupted, we're able to return to the original task more quickly and can accomplish more in a shorter period of time. We also know that when our brain is able to focus on the present moment, like it is when we practice mindfulness, it releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine that increases calm and increased focus. As we practice, mindfulness creates a brain that's more efficient and productive, improving our peak performance. Finally, when we integrate mindfulness into the workplace, we have happier employees that stick around longer. As it turns out, happiness and productivity are not only related, they're practically indistinguishable. The happiest employees, compared with their less happy colleagues, spend 40% more time focused on tasks and feel energized 65% more of the time. Happy employees also take fewer sick days and remain in their jobs twice as long. Research demonstrates that mindfulness training can cause a shift to the left prefrontal region of the brain where more positive mental states are activated. This shift allows us to approach situations with greater resilience and fewer negative emotions. Just as our brain creates neural pathways that respond to stress, mindfulness helps us create neural pathways that increase our positive emotions, our ability to focus, be present, and solve problems. So I'd like to leave you with some simple solutions for yourself, your community, and the world in general. For me, one of the beauties of mindfulness is that we don't all have to go on 3-month silent retreats to receive tremendous benefits. These are a few simple changes that can make a big difference. In A Mindful Nation, author Tim Ryan compares the mindfulness movement to the age of oil. It began as a little well here and there, and before we knew it, a whole system was born. The same can happen with mindfulness without the environmental challenges. The mindfulness movement plants seeds of change. They simply need to be nourished, practiced, and paid attention to. Support the introduction of mindfulness in different sectors. When we bring mindfulness into our lives, we feel better, we miss less work, we prevent disease, and we cost our system a whole lot less. When we bring mindfulness into education, we help students pay attention, regulate their emotions, manage stress, think creatively, and work efficiently. And when we bring mindfulness into the workplace, we decrease absenteeism, burnout, and turnover. We increase productivity and efficiency, and we create a happier, healthier place to work. I started practicing mindfulness 7 years ago to improve my health and create a more peaceful life for my family. From there, I decided to spread my practice, my knowledge to the children in my small mountain town. We now train parents, teachers, and corporate leaders as far off as Hong Kong. It started with me, and now my mission is to create 1 million mindful minds. My challenge to you is no matter what your workplace looks like, if you're interested in what you've heard today, start with yourself. We must take care of ourselves first. It's not a selfish notion, but rather a realistic one. From there, see what kinds of seeds, as leaders, you can plant in your workplace, your community, and the world beyond. Thank you.